Hello and welcome back to my channel. I am Mercedes and this is the Frugal Life with Mercedes. Today we are going to talk about food insecurity. I have been talking about food insecurity since the very beginning of my channel. If you guys remember, if you've been with me that long, I used to dumpster dive, not because I had a personal need at the time, but it was more of a political statement to show that all this food is being thrown out that is perfectly good and should be donated and should go to people. I also periodically have helped out at local soup kitchens and food pantries and different things like that. But the way food insecurity was explained to me was the lack of access to food or the inability to acquire food or possibly not knowing where your next meal was coming from or not knowing if the food that you had available to you was going to last you until you were able to acquire more. So it is a lack of consistent access to enough safe and nutritious food for a healthy life. This can concerns can be running out of food before you can buy more, eating less food or lower quality food, reducing your food intake. So if you're eating less to make sure that your kids have enough, you're food insecure. If you're not sure the food that you have available to you is going to last you and your family until next payday, that is food insecurity. Your check was short this month, so you guys are going to be eating a lot of ramen, and it's like that most months. That's food insecurity. I also want to point out that not having the ability to buy any fresh fruits or vegetables and fruits of any kind, like nutritious food, that is food insecurity. I'm not just talking about having a box of mac and cheese every once in a while or eating highly processed foods as a choice. I am talking about consistently having to choose lower quality foods because you do not have an option. It's not a preference to eat processed food. That is all that you can afford. Food insecurity is all over the country, but it is mostly in urban and rural areas of the United States versus suburbia. Now, there is food insecurity in suburbia, but it is far less statistically than in urban or rural areas. Now, specifically in urban or rural, they can be a food desert, which a food desert just means they don't have a grocery store or they don't have access to fruits and vegetables and things of that nature. Like maybe there's just a corner store and the nearest actual grocery store is very far away. And depending upon where you are, it would be a very far drive, or you might not even have access to a car. You would have to ride a bus. And I can speak for somebody that grew up in a rural area. There is no bus. There are no taxis. Even now, I don't think that they have Ubers in the town that I grew up in. So if you had to leave town to get the food, you'd have to somehow arrange for transportation, which makes it even more expensive than just being able to walk down the road. So that's what a food desert is there might not even be a grocery store, or there's like a dinky little corner store, and all it really has is like canned soup and ramen and maybe some milk, and that's about it. And so you have to be able to go and get those things and have the means to do so. Not just the means to afford the food, but the means to go and get it. Food insecurity is most prevalent amongst African Americans and Hispanic Americans. White people can be food insecure, but statistically it is much higher with ethnic groups. 47.4 million Americans are food insecure. That is 1 in every 7 households. 1 in every 7 households is food insecure in this country. 13.8 million of those people are children. That is why school lunches and school breakfasts and all All those things are so important because children are innocent. They did not choose to be born. They did not choose the parents that they got. They did not choose the situation that they were born into, and they are suffering. But 1 in 7 Americans is food insecure. That is absurd and obscene. Especially when sometimes you do see videos talking about people going to food banks or asking for handouts, I like to say hand-ups, or applying for food stamps. And obviously there is a need for it. If 47.4 million Americans are food insecure and almost 14 million of them are children, that is something that we have to discuss. Now, this is on the rise because of inflation, and you guys know that I believe we are in a recession, if not a depression. That is my personal opinion. But the economy has been crap for a really long time, and I've talked about this, as I said, for years, and food insecurity is not a new thing. It's been a problem for a really long time. I want to say sometime in the 70s, there was a documentary about, I believe it was like Appalachian children living in poverty and basically the introduction of food insecurity to the masses. And things like that is what helped us get free lunch programs or reduced lunch programs and different things like that. And they are really important. And the subsidies for all these are really important as well. And something has to be done because I also, as I mentioned, used to dumpster dive. There is so much good food that is thrown out. And I'm not just talking at the grocery store. I'm talking from the very beginning. Food is wasted in the field. Food is wasted in the factory. Food is wasted in transportation. It is wasted in the grocery store. It is wasted once it leaves our homes. I think it's 1/3 of the food each of us buy every year ends up in the trash. Now imagine if you just bought less food, not necessarily because you're food insecure, but you don't need to be throwing that food in the trash. And we've talked about that before. If you are in a good financial situation, that doesn't mean that you need to be blowing money on food that you know is going to end up in the trash, because there's people that need it. And I am not an expert in these things, but something has to be done. And make sure that you're checking on your friends, loved ones, and neighbors, because people hold a lot of shame when you talk about food insecurity, because it's embarrassing and it's shameful and it doesn't feel good, and you don't want to admit that that's what's going on. But if you can go and check on people, make sure people are being taken care of, and try to give people a safe space to talk about it. And if you know somebody that is food insecure, or you believe is struggling, make sure you let them know that there are resources available. Even offer to drive them to the local food pantry. I know where I live, there's a food pantry at just about every church, and I live in the South, so there's basically a church on every corner, and they have the signs out front saying food pantry day, what day it's open. And if you are in a financial position to donate your time or money or resources to a food bank, soup kitchen, whatever it be, I encourage you guys to do that. But remember, guys, show people kindness, because you don't know what people are going through, and nobody should be going to bed hungry, especially not in the greatest nation in the world. Okay, guys, so I hope that you got something out of that. Please consider subscribing to my channel, and until next time, guys, bye.